Okay. Welcome to the Tuesday 9 a.m. meeting of the BOCC. A little bit sparse today. We'll start. If you want to join me, we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. I'll ask Commissioner Mortensen to give us a review of the minutes.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Specifically, yes, I did review the minutes of the activities last week, and I move to approve those minutes.
Have a motion to approve the minutes. Any questions, corrections?
I've reviewed them too. I have no changes or corrections to make.
Okay. Seeing no hands, nobody approaching, I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Thank you. I'll run down through the consent agenda. First item, we have a call for hearing on January 30th, 2024 at 10 a.m. in these chambers. We're looking at a county code change with the planning commission, moving it from nine to 7. Agreements, contract bid awards. First two are utility easement from Christopher Buck and utility easement from Kathleen Clark. Number 4, amendment to the professional service agreement with Gibson Olson for on-call water and waste water engineering services. We're from extending that to the end of next year, December 31st, 2024. Same with Gary and Osborne Inc. professional service agreement for engineering consultants, and moving it from extending it a year to December 31st, 2024.
What's this story?
Bid award to Northwest Linings and Geotextile Products for the purchase of scrim reinforced polyethylene geomembranes. Total cost of $113,914.42. I think we heard those bids last week come in. Letters, notices, letter reappointing Robert Gregory to the Public Facilities District. Letter reappointing Richard Stump to the Public Facilities District. A letter to Betty Erickson reappointing her to the Public Facilities District. Letter to Michael Struley, hopefully I said that right, appointing him to Stormwater Advisory Committee. Letter to Tammy West reappointing her to the Fair Board. I had this one put back on. We had taken it off to get some input from the small cities, but this was a position that became vacant March of 23. So it sat vacant for roughly 9 months, and then Mr. Deinhardt applied. So a letter to Todd Deinhardt appointing him to the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. Letter from Mike Moss, Public Services Director, accepting the retirement of Don Nyman. Affidavit of posting and resume of the commissioner's proceedings for the month of December. And a letter from Federal Energy Regulatory Commission regarding bathymetric survey report on SWIFT number 2 project. And then we had vouchers in the amount of $4,565,883.13. questions, anything on the consent?
I have a question on the letter, item H. That's for the clerk, I guess. We've been doing a DocuSign past 2 times or so. So when we do what is implied in H, are we sending actual boxes of paper up there now?
When we have our new process going, we will not be needing to send the boxes of paper to the state archives. So we started this in January. So that process should be eliminated, except for the ones that need wet signatures, and there are exceptions for those.
Okay, I missed a little bit of that. So the answer is you only send the necessary documents in hard copy. Everything else is electronic.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. You should have said that in the first place.
Any other questions on consent? Yes.
A letter addressed to Robert Gregory. Is he also on the Longview PDA board? Is he? Well,
I don't know.
I'll save you the trouble. He is.
Okay.
So I'm kind of concerned. You got a conflict of interest there. Why do you have one man on both boards?
Well, he serves on the Public Facilities District, which is basically the Expo Center. And if he does something for Longview, is that,
Well, the conflict of interest, if you want to go back a year about the development of the fairgrounds. So you got a conflict of interest if he's on both boards, don't you?
well, I'm not seeing it, but
You don't see a conflict of interest. Having the
What-
same
will you
man
tell
on
me what
both-
you think the conflict of interest is. He serves the facility
Okay.
district for the Expo Center.
The so-called event center is county property. And now he's on the county public development authority, and he's also on the Longview Public Development Authority.
Yeah, if,
Haven't seen any actions that would.
Oh,
indicate-
no problem, nepotism, no conflict of interest dealing with both the county and the city. You don't see any conflict of interest there, do you?
I've been attending those meetings. I haven't witnessed any, yes.
Oh, boy. If you can't see it, then I'm not gonna try to convince you that there's a conflict of interest.
there are a couple of comments I'd like to make on that. One comment is, for me, it's been a longstanding battle or effort to explain to people that when we appoint them to a board, it's not for them to grind an axe in their favor or their favorite charity or their favorite city. It's because they hold some interest and expertise in an area. That doesn't mean that they won't be taking a look at something through eyeglasses that always show them a different color. It's kind of like a conflict of interest that you're addressing. But nevertheless, I hope that everybody who is hearing says, I'm on the board, not because I'm going to push my agenda, but because I have expertise in the particular area. The next comment there is, we do not get a surplus of applicants for these spots. So as you've noticed, we do get vacancies, and sometimes they sit there for a long time. It's something we struggle with. My own personal policy is that if there is a new citizen interested and they have the qualifications, I will tend to appoint the newer citizen than the one that's been on the board. Why? Because it's kind of like what you were trying to infer, that there's some favoritism in there. The answer is no, but we can only appoint those who apply.
So who does he represent? Cowlitz County or the city of Longview?
Well, that's what I just argued against. And I don't believe that, I personally don't believe in these political boundaries distinctions. There are citizens that use facilities all the way around, and the person on the board for the facility, okay, you laugh. I'll give you an example. I'm on the Washington County's insurance FUND fund. And when I'm at the board meetings, I've got the WCIF hat on. And there, my job is to make sure WCIF as an operating entity survives. You might be surprised that I'm often the odd man out on the vote. But when I leave the room, I go to the president or the executive director of the organization and I say, you're too expensive. You are going to be obsolete if you're not careful, and we will try and investigate a self-funding for our healthcare. We're large enough that we should be able to do that. You see the distinction?
No, who were you elected to represent? This board you talk about or Cowlitz County?
I'm elected to do the best job I can for Cowlitz County. You know how many times I get a call that says, I voted for you, therefore you ought to do what I want you to do? How do I know what the 51st percentage of people would like me to do? I mean, those are words that are bandying around in a political arena to gain whatever it is they want, but the arguments don't hold.
When you're elected by the Washington State Constitution and the National Constitution, you're supposed to be representing the people who elected you, not some committee.
No.
Not
What?
some committee.
No. Part of my,
Just
we
is-
could,
is my same question. You got a man representing Longview and you got a man today representing Cowlitz County. How basic a conflict of interest is that? It's pretty clear cut in my mind.
it can be or cannot be. And we've got this thing called OPMA that says I can't talk to him because I might engage in some sort of malfeasance or something like that. Well, you know, in truth, I could go to you and say, hey, Dragic,
No.
if this or that, then so forth. So the rules are not being violated here. The spirit behind it isn't being violated. The practicality of it isn't violated. What would you have us do? Obviously, you'd do something other than what we're doing.
Outside of this building and outside of this room, you're not supposed to discuss ex parte county business with another commissioner unless it's county business. As clear as an example of conflict of interest this is, it just floors me, but I guess I shouldn't say that with the way things are going. And being this is an election year, you're going to see some lunacy you never ever seen before. Matter of fact, Supreme Court justices are saying that. And down here at the local level, I see it right here. Putting the same man on both public development authorities is about as clear cut a conflict of interest I've ever seen. But we haven't seen anything yet. This is only the first month of Looney Tunes year.
And you gave it a proper inauguration.
Any other questions on consent agenda?
For Arnie.
Is it on the consent agenda?
Yeah, he mentioned the
Okay.
qualifications of yourselves to get this job. I think something in regards to a qualification.
Qualifications of a member who applied for an advisory board.
What exactly are they?
I beg your pardon?
What exactly are they?
I didn't catch that last word. What are the qualifications?
Correct.
Depends on the board, and it depends on who already is on the board. So for example, if I'm in a board that requires input from a municipality, and I've already got all 5 municipality types on there, I might not appoint a 6th person to display some other expertise that I would like on the board.
So it's not based on education or knowledge, or if you were a meat cutter at Safeway, you could be that party?
And it says, yeah, if you've been in business in the world, even hiring an employee where you specifically say, I want you for this job, you interview them, it's still a crapshoot for both the person and the employee. We try to do it in a check in the box arena in the modern world, but that doesn't really work out. It's inhumane. Biggest factor isn't, do you know how to operate this machine, but do you have the attitude to operate the machine properly? Do you have the attitude to show up at work and that kind of stuff?
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on consent? Not seeing any hands. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Did you need a motion
Oh,
first?
I need a motion. Sorry.
I do move to approve the consent agenda as presented by staff.
Thanks, Dennis. Okay, seeing no hands and stuff. Now I'll call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
I
Also vote aye. Thank you. Motion items, and Gina, I see you're online today. And I think they're all yours.
Good morning. Yes, Gina James, Health and Human Services. A couple items on the agenda today. The first 2 items, item 8 and 9, are related. So item 8 is our new grant agreement with the Department of Commerce for the CDBG Public Services Grant. This one in particular is for Meals on Wheels. And then following the state contract, item 9 is the pass-through with Lower Columbia CAP to pass that funding down to CAP to administer Meals on Wheels program. So as I mentioned, this is the new contract agreement. You'll see the state contract is in the amount of $67,000. There's a $3,500 admin allowance. So the pass-through contract is $63,500 with Lower Columbia CAP.
So Department of Commerce sends it to us and then it turns around and
Yes,
sends-
this one
yeah.
goes right to CAP. And as I mentioned, it's for the Meals on Wheels program to deliver meals to low-income seniors all the way up in Riderwood, down to Woodland, and everywhere in between.
Okay. Questions, comments on?
I guess I'm wondering 2 things. One is, how many people is this serving roughly? Do you know a number?
About 230 individuals last year.
And so the cost per individual?
I can get a calculator out. Comes out to about 291 per individual. And there was a little over 9,000 meals prepared and delivered last year.
So this is a cost for the entire year?
Correct. And I will add this this particular funding is not the only funding that CAP receives for Meals on Wheels. So there's additional federal funding that CAP receives to help support the total cost of the program.
And
Yeah,
these
if I
people,
could- If I could add, the area on agency and disabilities contributes pretty close to an equal amount of dollars. So whatever you see there is times 2 plus anything else that goes along. Like if I bring you a meal, I'm going to ask you to chip in however much you can afford. The number 5 comes up frequently.
so these individuals that are low and moderate income, do they also qualify for food stamps and other sources of income individually?
You're showing your age with food stamps.
I mean, like if they're on other assistance programs, and how does a person get off of this program? When does that happen?
So it's completely voluntary. So individuals can choose to participate or not. There is income eligibility requirements, and it's primarily individuals who are not as able to prepare their own meals anymore. So food stamps and those types of benefits may not be as helpful if the individuals can't cook and prepare the meals for themselves. So this way they come hot and ready or ready to heat up and eat. So there's just a little bit of a difference there.
Okay, I guess I don't know all the numbers per person here, but it seems like a lot of money especially if you're doubling or tripling this from other sources of income.
I can help you here a bit, but not much. Part of the reason is I've never in all this time been able to get an answer that I find believable. About, I don't know, 3 years ago, I was given the number of $15 per meal. Before that, I was given approximately the same answer, but it was like trying to pull hen's teeth. And then last time I asked that question, I was told it was $10. And last time was last year, despite the fact that there's been pretty rampant inflation all over the place. How I reconcile those, I have no idea, except it makes me very suspicious. There are also claims that this is a voluntary organization, but people get paid for the mileage. So I'm not sure what is totally voluntary there. Because cars are sunk cost. Well, anyhow, those particular arguments. I also have heard time and time again from various people that those meals are misused. I don't know whether it's true or not. I have to call the people that talk to me about that, and I have to say, well, can you show me your freezer and show me what's in there? The meals may be hot, but I mean, that was a claim just made. I've only heard about them coming in frozen, but I also want to refresh people's mind that last year, our current chairman was arguing for liberalization, where with that kind of dollars, couldn't we do something else like deal with a local eatery that would be glad to put out a meal for $15, let's say. So introducing some competition. I don't know where that went, but I don't think it went very far.
Yeah. I did have those discussions with them, and they aren't opposed to that. It's hard finding a restaurant to do it because there's the federal nutrition laws and the tracking they have to do tends to get onerous for a restaurant, it seems, but if somebody stepped and wanted to do it, they indicated to me that they would allow that they would do that because they can serve them hot. Their kitchen's right down over here. We met down in their kitchen. They can serve them hot within a certain radius, but when you're talking, if you start getting out in Riderwood or some of the other places, getting hot out there is a little more difficult. So if the a restaurant wanted to step up and do that, we even talked about maybe a school district that would meet and want to track all the federal things they got to track, that they'd be open to that.
So all the meals are prepared in one kitchen here in town?
Yeah, right down here.
And the soup kitchens have been around as long as I can remember.
Yeah.
But they've been with the Salvation Army or St. Vincent de Paul Center, places like that, that the government displaces them, I don't think is a good thing.
Yeah. And the contract with the feds, I'm trying to remember, Gina, I think it comes up every 4 years, and other people can bid on this. Nobody has but CAP to this date. So it does come open for bid every 4 years is what I remember.
I think so.
Well, I guess my personal experience from when taking care of my mom, and that she's been gone for many years now, but the Meals on Wheels trays that they delivered were half the size of a Hungry Man dinner and half the food. And a Hungry Man dinner you can get for about less than $6, $5.50 for the bigger ones, $4.50 for the smaller ones. I don't know what they pay per mile for people to deliver these things, but they get paid by the hour also.
No, my understanding is there's volunteer drivers. They may get reimbursed for their mileage to help with gas, but their time is voluntary to do the driving. We also, CAP also works with some local organizations. There's volunteers through one of our developmental disabilities programs that they go and volunteer their time and help deliver meals too. So there's a couple different volunteers. They may get reimbursed, like I said, for their gas to go out.
The current reimbursements in government seems to be 65 cents a mile, 67.5, something like that.
Okay, are we discussing both 8 and 9 right at the minute? Or just 8?
They're related.
Okay, so are the Meals on Wheels, are the meals for Wahkiakum County also prepared here in town, or is they prepared like in Cathlamet or something?
I'll take exception. I want 8 and 9 to be independent. The gentleman who spoke earlier talked about conflict of interest. These are the guys making the rules that prevent a better solution from happening. How that is not a conflict of interest is incomprehensible because it's manifested right there before our eyes. You mentioned it, a Hungry Man dinner and so forth. And that's buying the dinners individually too, right?
Yeah,
At
okay.
retail, not wholesale. Right, so I would like to treat 8 and 9 independently.
Okay,
So just say, I would say, okay with 8. I'm not happy about it, but I might say, okay. And 9, well, I'll probably say no on both, but they're independent. They should be independent.
okay, so you're gonna approve them independently one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll just stay with 8. And I guess I got the information I wanted. Thank you.
Good morning, Gina, and good morning, commissioners. There was a discussion last year about this very topic. And refresh my memory if it came up to do a survey among those that receive the meals to get an idea of how satisfied they are with them. Because we talked about, the discussion was about the amount of money that goes out to pay for these, and is it really worth it to those that receive the meals? So Gina, I don't know if any kind of survey can be done or has been done.
I know that CAP has done participant surveys, and when Commissioner Dahl and I went and met with them on site, they shared some of the survey responses with us at that time. from individuals sharing about their experience and appreciation for receiving the meals.
So it was all positive? There weren't any other comments that were made that were negative?
The problem with what you're asking is it's a one-sided thing. You give me something for free and you ask me if I'm happy. Well, if I'm a decent enough thankful person, I say yes. If I'm not and I want more, then I might say something. But absent in all of that is the cost of the program. And I find that is a problem. And speaking of cost, I spoke to it earlier. After all these years, I've been asking the cost. I have yet to hear today. We took that into account, Commissioner Mortensen. We looked at the costs, and these are the breakdowns, and this is the reason you should go ahead and authorize this. We're totally absent any of that data. And along those lines, the RFQ, I addressed that a little bit last week when someone, or the week before, someone says, well, why don't we have some more respondents? And that's because there's no reason for you to spend your energies to respond. The results are cooked in. Using a semi-pun.
Well, I'm not speaking like I'm against the Meals on Wheels. I just would like to know if all those that are served are, none of it's going to waste, none of it is stored up in their freezer because they have other means of receiving food and groceries. It's just a matter of looking into it a little bit more. I know there's been complaints about, oh, the commissioners are shutting the Meals on Wheels program down. And without knowing all the facts and seeing the whole big picture, it would be easy to assume that, but there's more information that's needed, and it's important to get all of it. So I'm interested as well. Thank you.
In regards to 8 and Lower Columbia here, Cap and Gina, I've known people that have took these meals to elderly folks. And most of the time, what I've noticed is it's elderly taken to elderly. And if we're worried about 65 grand in this community, we might as well try to make a field goal then. Because that CAP program is the one that's been here for eons, okay? And like he said, you can sit here and say that the meals are bad, but have you eaten one? Or they're cold, going to Ryder? Or you can go shop for a cafe guy to do it. He's not gonna do it. He wants to make money unless he's got a heart and a soul for people and wants to care about his community. But 65 grand to take care of the elderly, 230 recipients, I think's a drop in the bucket. These folks rely on those meals. We can't control what they do after we give it to them at their door. I think it's a shame to say that CAP might be not managing it properly when we really don't know the facts. And then the other thing is if you haven't got the data for the last whatever years about this financial deal compacted, whose fault is it? It would probably be, the buck stops here. Get the data, but let's not judge until we know. Let's find the truth on that subject, because they're the only ones that are here.
Yeah, you're putting sort of the cart before the horse. If I came to you and I said, sir, would you give me $100? You would look at me and your first question, your first internal response is probably hell no, but you would ask why?
Exactly.
And it would be up to me, the one asking for it, to explain to you the whole situation, and then you would say, yes, I will save your life by buying the pills that you need. Here's the $100. But we don't get that. I get people because we never put the hammer down. We never say no until you justify it, you won't have it. Then let me jump just a moment. There are unintended consequences. You know that in the family, you can give your child $10 and it's not going to affect your lifestyle for the most part. But there could be unintended consequences with someone who says, I got a free $10. And it's a bad example, but you get the idea. Then there's opportunity cost. What if for $67,000, we could actually provide twice as many people a more nutritious meal or a more flavorful meal? Wouldn't we want to do it? Then you asked, have I eaten a meal? Just as a sidebar, I ate a jail meal once, and it's food. It was not so tasty and all that, but it cost something like a $1.25. Okay, so the closest thing I've gotten to eating one or what's going on with these meals is I've reported, and just last Thursday, I spoke to someone who said, oh yeah, their neighbor, I'll bring you one. No, I can't bring you one. They were all in the freezer and we just threw them out.
Okay.
That's more common of the thing I hear.
Well, my question would be to Gina then. Gina, is it one meal a day that's brought out to these folks? And do you even have any idea what actually those meals are made up of according to some federal criteria?
Yeah, there are guidelines. I think one of the commissioners mentioned there are some guidelines that come with what ingredients have to be in the meals. They have to be nutritious meals. And then some individuals are also on restricted diets, like low sodium or gluten-free or something like that, which can mean, that sometimes the food might be a little bit more bland, but they are homemade in a kitchen, prepared. Some are delivered hot, as Commissioner Dahl mentioned, if they're within a certain radius and they can get to the individual at the right temperature, they can be delivered hot. Otherwise, they're frozen to be reheated at a later date. So it's a combination, but as I mentioned, there's nutritional components that have to be included in the meal, and then any dietary restrictions as well.
So Gina, do you know if they are like Hungry Man dinners? I mean, are these frozen dinners that you peel the top off of that other elderly folks? I mean, is every meal that way, or is there anything prepared in the kitchen that's actually from scratch?
They prepare the food themselves in the kitchen. So it would be, like I would do at home, prepare a freezer meal. And
okay,
so it's prepared that way and then packaged and frozen or taken hot.
Yeah. And that's brought out 5 days a week?
I don't know exactly how many days, but they will bring, as I mentioned, they might bring some hot, and then they also might bring some frozen so that they could have some a few days later, for example. So,
well, then I would suggest, like we told the coroner, you need to get more data. Because we need to know how many days, because 65,000 to me is not a lot of money, but how many days is it going on? There's 230 recipients or so. I know we have to have a program like that no matter what for the elderly, period. And anybody that would see that that's not a good idea needs to recheck. But maybe we need more data to convince the folks here of Cowlitz County and maybe here on the board, because I don't think it's a hard thing to convince them if we provide the proper documentation. And that's pretty much it.
Commissioner Mortensen, let me congratulate you on obfuscation. I can't even.
Obfuscating.
The whole issue here. You did a beautiful job. Now, I was involved in food service. We got government commodities from USDA where I went to school. And the students worked in the cafeteria to prepare their own meals. And being a land grant college, much like Washington State University, we had a dairy barn, a poultry barn, and some of our items came from those two schools, the School of Agriculture. Now, what you should do is what the late Governor Booth Gardner did when he was executive of Pierce County. He didn't sit on his ass in an office all day. He actually went out to the different departments in Pierce County unannounced, not in camouflage, but he wasn't obvious. And he actually saw what was going on. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you people just give Community House money to buy the Coach restaurant, to set it up so the inhabitants can learn food service? Didn't you just do that?
We gave them some remodeling money. They already had purchased the Coach, but yeah.
Right. Well,
That was, I don't think that was CAP. Wasn't that Community House?
yes, it was, Commissioner Weber.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, right down the road from this building, used to be the old Corner Tavern, which is now grounds for Opportunity run by LCC. Been closed for I don't know how long. Then you got a huge commercial kitchen, far more than what we had when I was going to LCC in the mid 80s or early 80s. They had basically a kitchen, like a residential kitchen. You should see that facility now. It's huge. It's on a university size, like where I went to school. And it's not being utilized. So you're worried about what, $65,000 for something maybe 1,300 to 1,400 calories, like a meal ready to eat, famously known as meals rejected by Ethiopia, if you've ever had one. A little bit better than the, what is it? The big man dinner, the chicken dinner. And let me tell you, the school district went to that years ago. Back in the late 50s, they went to a central kitchen and where everything was pre-prepared in tin foil and then a plastic container. And now they want to go back to each school having their own kitchen. Well, if you want to examine what one of those meals, just ask the Longview School Board. Can I see one of your meals, if it's still coming from the central kitchen? And that'll be something similar to what CAP is doing. Now, one of my former teachers worked there, the best chemistry teacher in the history of the Longview School District, free of charge. He just did it on his own. And then my next door neighbors did it too, free of charge, all on their own. And when the components came in, they sorted the components in the basement of the old Sears building on Commerce. So if you really want to see what's going on, do what the late Governor Booth Gardner did. Go out in the field and take a look at it for yourself. That's all I have.
So Mr. Dragic, with all due respect, the kitchen at the old tavern location, the Grounds for Opportunity, that's the CAP kitchen that is used.
For the Meals on Wheels.
Grounds for Opportunity is the CAP operation, and they didn't
Okay.
survive as a restaurant through the pandemic.
Yeah,
they're
I'm
still
familiar
using
with
that.
the background.
But they're still using that to prepare the meals for this program.
And yet, of course, you don't have a meals preparation program anymore at LCC, at least none that I know of. the one that was there when I was there in the early eighties was run by a Swedish lady. And we were in the Forest Tech program. And every Thursday they'd have New York steak for $5. Sad to say, we might have used state vehicles above the speed limit to get there for the $5 New York steaks, but they were delicious. Prepared by students from LCC under the direction of this Swedish lady. They were steaks to die for. Now you got a facility that's huge. They can have banquets there. They can rent out the student center. And it's underused. So there's your other option if you're worried about, oh God forbid, we're gonna give these senior citizens too much food value. Or maybe they'll become gluttons, or it'll end up in the freezers of these 200 and some odd senior citizens. Believe you me, on Thursday when I was going to school, none of that New York steak went to waste.
This is all really interesting. Said in a modestly curious way, a big difference that you fail to understand is that we are a commission. We're not a governor. We cannot do what the governor has done. And I'm not recommending that we go that way. So going out in the field is something I've done, something I don't do much anymore because it really doesn't matter. Ultimately, I'm a very practical individual. Give you an example. I've lost every Meal on Wheel vote for 7 years straight. I lost about a month ago the $2 million we gave Community House on Broadway, and I thought my arguments were rather appropriate. I still lost it. So it doesn't matter what it is. As a fellow once said on Facebook, your logic conflicts with my emotion. And that's a situation we face here. It's up to the public to do a better job of saying enough is enough. But we've heard the argument, it's only $65,000. Well, how many $65,000 does it take before you start to ask yourself, are you being the horse and animal farm that's doing all the labor and while somebody else is enjoying the profits? So in terms of older people taking care of each other, one of my fondest communities around here is Riderwood. They have a community meal every Thursday now, and it's $10. It was $10. Still less than $15. And trying to compare apples to oranges, not meant as a pun in this case, is a difficult thing to do. But it's also very flawed system that says people can vote themselves all the money they want. Like I mentioned earlier, soup kitchens have existed for a long time. Like the gentleman who's at the microphone now, many of us would not object sparing a meal for anybody. But we've abdicated that and pushed that onto the government. And they can take care of themselves first before they take care of anybody else. And that's the problem. I can't seem to get people to understand that that's what they've done. And there is no out on that because, oh, you're a mean person. You're going to drive grandma off the cliff.
I agree with this gentleman and the main thing, what he said. Don't notify. If you go out and inspect, I don't care what it is, with the building and planning department, with CAP, with any organization that the county is funding, you don't call them 3 days in advance and tell them to clean up the kitchen. You don't call them 3 days in advance and get everything squared away so when we come out and inspect. That is not the way to be an inspector, because you need to see the everyday operation of whatever it might be. And I don't think CAP, and I'm just going to use this as a example. We all know in regards to like Medicare, if you've all got the phone call, we'll sell you a cart to ride around on because it's been approved by the federal government and it's $4,000 and you're all eligible for one. Yeah, to me, that's criminal because people just say yes on the phone and they get one shipped to their house and they don't use it. I don't think we're looking at this in the regards to CAP. I hope we're not. And I don't think there's too many options out there besides CAP. And CAP does a lot more for people in this community. Provides diapers for children's, for mothers that don't have enough money to buy diapers. There's a lot of things that they do and they're already in force. So to try to put this to somebody else, which would have no idea the concept of what it really takes to do it, is something you really got to look at, because when they find out what the total cost is, it could be a heck of a lot more than the 65 Gs. CAPs are, I would imagine CAP probably feeds other people out of that kitchen. Who knows? But that's the things you got to look at. And I think everybody should be held accountable economically in this community, any organization that you're funding as a county. But we have to look into the data before we cut the throat of them. And that's the key. But you do not go out to a property and call them prior, say, we're coming, clean up everything, or come to the kitchen and see what the meals taste like. You just walk in the door, say, how you doing? And do it that way. If Booth Gardner did that, I think I give him kudos for that. But, or if we have somebody under you folks, that's it, you can have to do that, which we do in some cases. That's what they should be doing.
I'm in favor of CAP, and I appreciate the fact that they're helping take care of the elderly. That's not the issue. And I think we're mixing apples and oranges here. Number one, $67,000 is not a drop in the bucket. And if you're gonna call it a drop in the bucket, that bucket's only got so many damn drops in it. Eventually, it's gonna run dry. Number two, it's not a matter of we don't want to feed the elderly. It's a matter of accountability. If you demand accountability, now if you deny this money because you're waiting on accountability and details for what the costs are and how that money is being spent, oh my goodness, you just hate the elderly and you're going to get blamed for withholding the money because you want accountability from where that money's going and what it costs. Number two, this idea that you're going to go out in the field and watch them deliver meals or go taste one doesn't give you a single instant of any type of information on what it cost to get it done, which is the issue. You want to know how much it costs. You want to know where your money's going, and you have every right to demand that because you're approving funds for somebody that just, if they're just asking for it without accountability, that's not okay. Your job as commissioners isn't to give every bleeding heart money. Now, I do appreciate that CAP is taking care of the elderly. Like I said earlier, my mom was one of the recipients of Meals on Wheels. She was also one of those people who stacked them up in the freezer. When she died, I ended up throwing away, I don't know how many dozens of them she had stacked up in the freezer. And then to me, that's immaterial. She chose to eat them or she chose not to eat them. I was supplying most of her food, so she didn't really need them. But that's aside from the fact that I appreciate that we're helping the elderly. We need to do that. But your job is accountability for where that money's going and how it's being spent when you're asked to give it to them. That's my 2 cents worth. Inspecting it in the field doesn't tell you what the costs are.
A lot of stuff on this one. Number one, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure this program works that way, but many times if Department of Commerce if we tell the Department of Commerce we don't want that money, they may just turn around and send it direct. I'm not saying that's the case with this one. It is on some programs. I don't know if that's the case on this one. So even if we tell no, we don't always are able to save the money. Do I think the Meals on Wheels program is without flaw? No, absolutely not. In communities should be taking care of these people themselves. Churches need to step up, other places need to step up, so you wouldn't even have to have this. In Woodland, the Rotary Club does it for the people down there. Now, I think it's not always hot, it's sandwiches and stuff, but a club picks it up and takes care of it. And I think in communities, the better scenario would be that the locals do that. But they have to do that to get, it's been real hard to get anybody to step up and do that. So I do have concerns about seniors. Is some of it wasted? Yeah, probably is. But a lot of them, from my hour of sitting down there with them and chatting with them, and then actually talked her into coming in, and she spent time in here and talked about it. A lot of these people, are people that have mobility issues, and they're not going to run down to the grocery store and pick something up. They need to have some of that assistance. So it's a program that's not without flaw, but it's a program that until I find something better, that I'll stick with it.
I want to make it clear, everybody needs to be held accountable financially in this community, in any type of business setting that has to do with the government or you guys. But some of those older folks, hey, Gina, what is the requirement to even get Meals on Wheels?
There's a income, you have to be a senior and you have to meet an income threshold as well. CAP will also come when you are interested in the program. They will come and meet with you and it's kind of do that eligibility screening and assess what some of your needs are. Part of the determination is that you do need assistance with meals, right? So I spoke earlier about individuals not being able to prepare the meals themselves or get out to the store to pick up food and things like that. So that's a factor in it as well.
But you don't have a threshold number. You don't have a number for those folks in regards to how much money their income is.
It's
Probably has something to do with federal
yeah.
poverty levels, that type of thing.
Yeah, they look at the area median income level. So you have to meet a certain threshold of the area median income to qualify. It has to be considered in that low to moderate income threshold.
Having read the New York Times just this weekend, and we're coming up on, of course, April 15th, Happy Day. And everybody has to get their W-2s in. According to the IRS, favorite federal agency, for a man of my age, over 60, the threshold for income is $15,404, I believe. And then for a family of four, it's, I want to say 34,000, but I can't swear to that. It's about double what an individual is. So if you too can live on $15,404 per year, you would probably qualify for these CAP meals.
Any other questions, comments on item 8? Seeing none, I'd call for the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we accept the grant offered from the state to cover costs for Meals on Wheels as presented by staff.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the grant as stated in 8. Any further comments?
I did want to make one comment that hasn't been mentioned yet. One of the benefits for these small number of people who have mobility issues can't easily move around to take care of like doing the shopping and cooking and stuff is that the volunteers who deliver the meals also do a wellness check when they show up. And oftentimes these folks for whom there isn't typically family around to take care of them, that's one of the only contacts they have during the week. So again, we're talking about a relatively small number of people, and the costs are in line. As your representative on the CAP board, I know that some of the cost figures that have been thrown out are not really the whole story, and it's not as expensive as some of the numbers that have been thrown out. But again, the need is there. It does offer that constant weekly check-in for these folks who are living in isolation and can't fully take care of themselves. And I think it's a worthwhile program to support.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, if you look at any of political speak, you will see things like these people who can't fully take care of themselves, these people who don't have anybody else to help them, and so forth. Those are all assertions. Those are all the ways that are used to sway people, but we don't have any numbers on that. I mean, a valid question would be to ask would the public be happy to spend that 65,000 if they knew that 80% of the meals were superfluous, if you will, if I may use that term? Or would they object? Would they object if 10% were superfluous? Without any numbers, we have no idea what it is we're doing. And the question has been asked here frequently, well, go get those numbers. I've tried.
Any other?
If that's what we're looking at, I would recommend the board tables this until we get those numbers, give these people the opportunity to provide them. Gina's here. Gina, all she's got to be is asked, just like the coroner in the past, or Gary Basher. Everybody should have that opportunity. If the vote's going to be today to deny that, I think it should be tabled, and Dennis made the motion to pass it. So that's what I would like to share.
I see a hand up, John. Go ahead, unmute yourself. Go ahead. It shows you're unmuted, but I'm not hearing any. Okay. Not having any luck hearing you, John. Did you put something in the comments? That's somebody else. Okay, well, I don't know why Audio is not working. So. I don't see any. If he gets it working, we'll do, but other than that, I don't see anybody else with hands up. I'm not able to hear John, so we'll call for a vote. Those in favor,
Aye.
Aye.
also vote aye. Thank you. Gina, item 9 is not, we said we take it from Commerce. Item 9 says we give it to CAP.
Yes, and that's actually a requirement of the CDBG. This funding comes from the Community Development Block Grant Public Services portion. That specific funding says that it's to be allocated to your local community action agency, which in our area is Lower Columbia CAP. So that's part of the funding requirement for this. So item 9 is passing the funds down to Lower Columbia CAP, in this case, to support the Meals on Wheels as we've been discussing.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I have trouble in life when someone says I have no choices. And what I'd like to do on this one is follow the lead of the gentleman who spoke earlier and put this off until we get some of the numbers that have been discussed and just aren't available. There's probably nothing else I'd say on that.
My question would be, what numbers are you asking for? You haven't given much to go on in terms of
I could have
kind of
predicted
data
that.
that you need.
Yeah, I could have predicted that because that's always the question. And I'll be a little crude in answering that. If I've got to go do the job for everybody, I'm not sure why it is we need them. Give me all the data you can gather, try to put it in a sensible manner that is germane to the business. So when people say, well, we did an exit interview and everybody was happy, that I've mentioned again any number of times before, that isn't a satisfactory analysis. People know what it is exactly we're looking for, which is the cost of the meal, the real cost of the meal. We'd like to know an estimate of how many meals get thrown away. We would like to know how many people who are receiving this have absolutely no other choices. If I could pass my grocery bill on to somebody else, I probably would do that. But that's not what we're supposed to do to help people. So,
but you're not asking for anecdotal evidence, right? You don't want the stories.
Correct, because I've got plenty of
stories.
stories on both sides, and I don't know what to make of them because we need numbers. The public itself could chime in, get prepared and say, I am willing to spend this much or something like that, but I never hear that. I've asked questions like that and people don't want to answer them. But like I mentioned earlier, I'm ultimately very practical. If we're going to help people, let's make sure we are helping them, not damaging them and not damaging their kids. In history, there's never been a society that turned welfare over to the government and survived long. We're struggling right now. Someone mentioned earlier that we might be blowing up. Well, there's reason. The unintended consequences of passing over compassion to somebody else is monumental.
No, it's been a while that I spent that hour with him, and I might have those notes somewhere, and I can't remember. Gina, I think, and I'm trying to recall, and I could be totally off, but I think she told us that costs about $7 for them to prepare a meal somewhere in that area. Of course, this has been probably a year ago. They indicated that not everybody that has applied gets into the program because they have to meet the deal. There's certain criteria they meet, so they do some screening. I don't know what, how strict all that is and how many meals get wasted. I don't know I don't recall any answers to that. That's true.
I would caution that whenever I've gotten numbers and I've probed on them, they just don't hold up. They're just inconsistencies. I don't know if they're intentional or just sloppy, but I'm sure when we sent out welfare checks to some Nigerian prince, we didn't mean to do that.
Yeah. I think when she was in, she had some, it's hard to say. I think she had some calculations that came to that figure, but it's been a while.
I think we all got to realize there's a shelf life on products too. And some of this stuff gets thrown out in the community house, their food, and I know the cook over there. So things get tossed because it can't be used because of liability. Then if you order short, somebody goes hungry. So you got to look at all that. And I agree with Arnie. Bring the specifics. And if you work from the specifics and they provide the specifics, then there shouldn't be a problem making a clear decision on what you're talking about. I don't think
the
it's,
interesting thing about what you say is that we've been in operation as a society for a long time. So you want to know what the losses should be? Go talk to a restaurant. Go talk to Safeway. They'll tell you what their losses are.
exactly. They toss out a lot of food. So, I mean, as long as they're forthright and honest with this board and you guys are happy with the data they provide, I don't think it's a major decision. And I don't see why Gina wouldn't provide that information. I think if you go ask about the food and the quality of it, which it kind of does have something to do with the price because everything's based on price. Quality or real quality, you're going to pay more. But I don't know about you folks, but my parents are dead. And they used to eat those TV dinners too. So they're not the only ones. I don't know how good they are at the cap, but just get them to provide the proper documentation on the economics. Now, are they entitled to make a profit? I have no idea. But if you think you can bring somebody in to replace that 65K, good luck with that. Good luck with that at today's prices. And then, hey, Gina, does that 65K incorporate the mileage fees and everything? Is that or 67K, whatever it is? Is that all figured into the deal with whatever other contributions you guys get?
The 65,000 from this grant primarily covers there's a staff at CAP who coordinates the entire program. The deliveries, the meal prep, the food that needs to be ordered, all of those things. So this grant primarily covers that portion of it. Their other grant covers a lot of the actual food costs. And we have gotten sort of cost per meal in the past and those types of numbers, and we can ask CAP to give us a further breakdown of that again. It does vary and change because the funding amounts can change, the cost of things can change, so it can fluctuate a little bit. So I'm happy though to connect with them back. I think they had planned to be on today, but with the weather, I know they ended up closing and may not have been able to make it today. So I'm happy to reach back out and ask for that breakdown again.
And that staff that prepares those meals, are they full-time? Do they do other services while they're there? So, I mean, so when we look at this money, is everything going to be chopped up where this is for the elderly meals program, and you guys do others? You're not going to, how is that with those people? Did you get my question? Are you understanding what I'm asking?
I think so. There are a lot of, CAP does a lot of programs. We've been talking about a couple of them. And the way that they break that down, their staff tracks their time by program. So if they've, if they've worked in this particular program, then it would get towards this grant. If they worked in a different program, it would get charged towards a different grant.
Well, then I would make it clear that you bring it to the board that way if you have to, because that's what we need. You gotta have, it's checks and balances.
Mhm.
If you're writing checks you can't cash, we have a problem.
Yeah.
Gina, you also mentioned that this is the CDBG grant, public service portion. And what Cowlitz County gets is only to be used for assistance to folks outside the city of Longview. That's still
correct.
true.
That's
Does the 200 participants that you quoted, are those the outside of city Longview participants, or is that the total program offered the meals?
I think that is total individuals, but I will double check and verify that with CAP.
Because I know the city of Longview contributes the same type of money from their CDBG grants. I don't think that's changed since I was on the council. And then Arns Group, the area agency on aging. It's quite an acronym. And I know that they contribute money as well. So it's going to be a figure that's much larger than the 65,000. So it's gonna, the numbers will be different from what just this grant offers. And that's part of the reason it seems kind of confusing.
Yeah,
One of the reasons.
that is correct. I was going to remind the gentleman that there's a lot more cost involved there. The area agency on aging and disabilities, ADSWA is what it's called. They contribute, I think, at least an equal amount. Their budget, by the way, for the elderly and the disabled is roughly $31 million a year. So there's, again, one of the complications for us to try and figure it out is there's so many entities that deal with the same problem. It's really hard to know. It turns out that our executive director of ADSWA is very good. They managed to do quite a bit at a cost that is blown out. That is to say, no other agency, I think, competes successfully with our ADSWA. That's a point I'd like to make again, is people do matter. It's not just anybody. It's just the person in charge who wants to make it successful, really cares about how the product goes out, makes a huge difference.
I gotta believe that they've got enough records, like how many miles were driven to deliver meals. I mean, they're paying by the mile, as I understood, they're reimbursing for mileage. So I gotta believe they got records on how many miles were driven and how many meals were delivered. And I guess I'm certain that the food's not being donated, so they got to have costs of the food that they put into last year's budget, or how much they actually spent, what their actual expense was. Are the people who are preparing the food, are they paid? Are they volunteers? I mean, there's got to be, this should be really straightforward and simple to put together what the cost of Meals on Wheels program is, and administrative costs or whatever it is. And I understand earlier from the $3,500 number, but all of that stuff should be dirt simple of where that money's going. Whether the money comes from us or whether it comes from some other organization or from the federal government direct or from somebody donating $10 on the street corner, they got to be able to say, this is where the money went to each one of those categories. They're paying it out. I can't believe they're not documenting it and keeping records. That just doesn't make good sense. So this should not be a hard thing for you to get that back. I can't grasp why this is such a hard thing to get those numbers. I don't get it.
Well, and I'll repeat, she was sitting right over there and she provided some numbers and stuff. We're talking about one that pays somebody's salary. And most everything we do comes on reimbursement. So they have to send us something before we send this out. I don't know if this is one of those programs, but we're just talking about this funds a coordinator that does all that.
Mhm.
So we're not buying food, we're not doing any of this other stuff. And I get it. This whole big program, if we want to bring in federal funds, the senior funds, everything they get and delineate that to make us comfortable on the 63, I'm fine doing that. But I'm telling you, we had her in and we did some of that stuff.
Okay, so is this for Wacacom County, the question I asked earlier, is the food for Wacacom County prepared here locally or is it prepared in Catholic?
Everything they prepare is in their kitchen right down here.
Even for Wacacom County?
Well, I'm sure it sends out frozen because they can't keep it warm that long.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? I would entertain a motion if so desired.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we table item 9 for 2 weeks.
We have a motion to table. Any questions, comments? What are we going to accomplish?
One of the reasons that I don't think progress has been made in the past is hinged on the word that was used here called accountability. As long as we get given any numbers and we say, okay, inconsistent as they might be, and we continue to fund the agency, there's no reason for them to do anything otherwise. So I'm hoping that in 2 weeks' time, they'll understand there's a serious interest in a logical and honest assessment of the cost of the program.
Any other questions, comments? I would just say again, I worked, I sit down and chat with her, talked her into coming in. She spent time in here. We had a chance to answer all these questions. And so I'll be honest with you, Aaron, I'm not sure what this accomplishes, but
Okay, answer me this. How do you explain that the number she offered or was offered the last time we talked about this was $10 a meal, and prior to that it was $15 a meal, and sotto voce was the statement that, well, that did not include contributions from the recipient. How do you explain that?
well, costs of anything can change based on units. If you serve more families or less family, cost goes down, cost goes up. Cost depends on cost of food. It depends on inflation. There's a lot of factors in there.
You and I know that, but you tell me that when a cost drops by a third, you don't find that surprising when almost always costs go up by a third, or I should say go up, but don't go down. That should just alarm you and say, whoa, how did that happen? What magic are you using?
And she didn't answer those questions for me when she was here.
Nope.
I don't think there's anything wrong with taking 2 weeks to find out the real answers. Put them on notice. You got 2 weeks. Do it or else. And Mr. Dahl there, realize this, there isn't nobody else to take their place. You guys already said there's no alternatives. Nobody's standing in line. So, and nobody knows the real cost at this point. And if this has been going on for some time now, which it seems it has, the questions have been raised over a few years or something, then I look at it as a responsibility of this board that didn't do their job. You should have had them 2 years ago if that was a problem and made sure that it got done, or you should have cut them off back then. So give this lady her time. If she doesn't do her job, you get rid of it. That's plain and simple.
Once again, we did. I had her sitting right over there. We had all opportunity.
Well, I agree with the chairman. I'm not sure it's going to be persuasive. None of the information seems to have changed anybody's mind. So I will be a no on this vote.
Okay, we have a motion on to table. Those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I also vote no.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve the grant going to CAP as proposed by staff
We have a motion.
and required by the state.
Okay, we have a motion. Discussion. Not seeing any hands. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
So as your representative on the CAP board, I will bring back information and try to get answers to the questions that Aaron has asked, particularly about the costs and the utilization. So
Okay.
we do meet monthly, so it'll be shortly after the first of the month.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, I can't help but be terribly uncomfortable, and I knew today was going to be terribly uncomfortable. I have lived on 4 continents. I have seen what other societies have done to themselves. I am frightfully afraid of ours. It's always cloaked and it's for your children, or it's the decent thing to do. You just got to open your eyes and you got to take a look at the world.
Excuse me. Gina, item 10, you sent an email to us. Are 10 and 11 part of this email, or is that something different?
I did send an email about 10 and 11. So
Okay,
and really quick, jumping back to the CDBG grant, there's an additional form. I just want to make sure there will be an okay to have the chairman sign. It's an environmental review form that does not apply to this project, but it requires the chairman's signature, just saying it doesn't apply. So I just wanted to mention that, and I'll send that over to Commissioner Dahl. So item 10 and 11 are related. Item 10 is in relation to our consolidated homeless grant. This grant, as a reminder, which I mentioned in the email, is some of the document recording fees that when they're collected locally, we have to send some of them back up to the state. We keep some and we have to send 1% to the state. The consolidated homeless grant is one way that the state then turns around and sends some of that funding back to counties through the consolidated homeless grant. The grant for the new 2-year period was approved a few months ago by the board. So we have the grant already adopted. The state recognized an error in their calculation with the HIN rent budget item. So the budget line for the HIN rent, HIN again is housing and essential needs. This is a rent subsidy for individuals who are eligible for HIN through the state. HIN is a program designed to support individuals who are found by the state unable to work for a period of 90 days or more due to a disability. So there's a rent assistance that comes through the consolidated homeless grant to counties to administer locally. So they identified a miscalculation in the HIN rent budget line. So they've sent an amendment to add the funding to the rent portion. So the amendment from the state is adding $500,000 into the HIN rent portion. Item 11 is the pass-through contract with CAP that again was approved a few months ago when we originally approved the grant and the pass-through with CAP. So the amendment with CAP is passing through the HIN amended budget with them, as well as you'll notice the CAP amendment is a little bit more than the 500,000 from the state, and that's because we've factored in admin and operations, which covers the staff time for the additional rent funding. So it typically comes in, there's the HIN rent, and then there's admin and operations that support administering the rent piece. So that's why that piece is a little bit more. So I'm going to stop there for a second and see if there's questions on this.
To paraphrase real quickly, 10 and 11, we've approved in a previous month. The state said, hey, we miscalculated. You actually have more money. So these are to cover the adjustments due to their miscalculation.
Correct.
Okay.
Gina, in your documentation, do you have a rough guesstimate of how many clients qualify for HIN?
I don't know how many qualify. I can tell you there's currently about 139 individuals who are receiving HIN services through CAP. That doesn't necessarily mean that's all who's eligible. There may be more individuals who are eligible, just not receiving services from CAP.
And because they qualify for HIN, they're getting housing vouchers, so they have a place to stay?
Correct. So if they've qualified for HIN, the state has determined that they're not able to work for a period of 90 days or more. And so they may be able to access a housing rent assistance for their housing while they're going through either determining if their disability is permanent or temporary. They go through that process with the state.
And if it's a permanent disability, does that get them off of HIN, or do they keep access to those benefits?
If they're found to have a permanent disability, then then they would be eligible for disability. And so you transition then to a different a permanent disability support at that time, if that's the determination.
So one of the reasons I'm asking the questions is I know that there are folks staying at the Hope Village who are transitioning out of that housing. And I'm just curious as to whether in that transition to more permanent housing, they are in the HIN program or not.
Yeah, there are some individuals who are in the HIN program that have who may be staying at Hope Village and they are eligible for HIN. And so the HIN program has helped some of those individuals transition out to different housing.
Just a semi-mechanical question, Gina. These, you said that the state takes a portion and then we apply and they give us back a portion.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know if we get back above and beyond what has originated in this county?
I don't think we get back everything that goes up. I think the state, if that's what you're asking, the state keeps a portion for their own operations and whatnot, and then some of it comes back.
Okay, let me ask it differently so I'm clear on it. So funds in this program from Clark County don't get diverted over to Cowlitz County because it's all pooled together in the entire state.
I'd have to clarify with the state exactly how they do it.
Okay, thank you on that. This is probably irrelevant. And these funds are only for rental assistance that we're talking about at the moment?
Yes,
And is that part of that big consolidated motion we approved with the Department of Commerce?
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
So a portion of the money is for essential needs, right? Can you just remind the audience what some examples of those essential needs are?
Yeah, so there is some essential needs that comes out of the, there's another budget line called HIN operations that would come out of that particular budget line as opposed to the rent. But if someone's eligible for the HIN program and they might already have housing, for example, but they're still eligible for HIN, they can have access to essential needs support. So laundry detergent, shampoo, hygiene supplies, some things like that, those essential need items, toilet paper, they may be able to get assistance with those things as well.
And then most likely, and there's an additional program to supply food subsidies, the SNAP program.
Individuals may also be eligible for that, but it is separate than this particular program.
I'm assuming this, like most of the programs, are reimbursement, so they give us this, but it's a reimbursement program, so if we don't have enough vouchers or whatever, typically,
Yeah.
not always is all spent.
No, it's not always all spent. But yeah, and it operates the same, the cost reimbursement, they expend it and then ask for reimbursement.
Gina, how did?
Actually, I don't disagree with.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's a sensible.
Yeah.
Gina, with respect to the other rental subsidies programs, which we had the CARES and the ARPA, this is much smaller, right? How many dollars are we actually talking about for rental or utility assistance?
So with the amendment, brings the total to about 1.3 million for the year.
How much? I'm sorry.
1.3 million.
Okay, and that compares to roughly close to 9 before.
Right.
Okay, what's happened to the people that were in the gap? That is to say, because 9 was liberally used, but now we're down to 1.3, or are there other rental subsidies of which I'm unaware?
Well, there's a difference here. This particular one is for individuals who are eligible for HIN. So the other programs didn't have that eligibility component. It was, related to COVID or things like that. This particular rent is only available to individuals who are eligible for HIN through the state.
Understand, but back then, a lot of people received rentals subsidies. Presumably, we the public did that, or were willing payers as taxpayers to do that because it was, pardon the use of the word, essential for them to continue in a home. And that has stopped. So what's the report? What's happened with those people? It's been stopped almost, at least half a year now, if not longer?
Yeah, I think it's been a little
About
longer
9
than
months.
that. Yeah. I'm not sure, to be honest. I mean, I can try to gather some information on that and see what is, I see Marcia standing up back there. She might be able to give some insight on that.
Yeah, and one of the reasons before we go there that I ask about that is because we spent a lot of money, and that is actually counterproductive. anybody who looks at any data in history knows if you subsidize it, you grow it. Our colleges are exactly like that. As soon as the government got involved, the expenses continued to grow, and we've continually fed the rental industry. Now, as I recall, of the grants that were given out, it was an average of $863 a month or something like that that were paid out of that ARPA fund. Well, that's a phenomenal amount of money. If I'm a landlord, I don't need to drop the rent. So when I'm taking a look here at the difference between the programs, I start asking maybe too many questions.
Good morning. I remember a year ago last month when that funding was almost all used up. The question was brought to that how is the vetting done for each of the recipients? And then we had a workshop where it was Gina, myself, another public attender, and the commissioners to talk about the vetting process and who vetted it. And there were changes made in that vetting process as a result of that workshop. So I'm wondering about that same question with the vetting process and what are the questions asked for those that qualify for this funding? Also, my question would be, how are the recipients given the funding? Is it just specifically for the month that they are missing, they're not able to pay that month and maybe the following month? Or is it approved for an automatic 6-month funding to that tenant?
Yeah, so this one is a little bit different than the previous assistance programs related to the pandemic. The HIN program, the state does the eligibility and the determination. And if someone goes through that process and the state determines they're eligible, that individual has to stay up on their connecting with their state caseworker and any requirements that their caseworker gives to them. And if they are following all of those and they maintain their HIN eligibility, then they're able to receive the housing benefit. And so it's a little bit different in that sense that the state is doing a lot of that piece of it. And we verify the eligibility and verify they're still eligible. And if that's the case, then they are able to access the housing benefit.
So to address that gap that took place after the funding was done, the Community Mediation Center had a lot of hard questions that we were asking each of the tenants who called for help. And we would ask them if they were working, if they were able to work, if the work that they had at the moment was providing enough to pay for their housing. And then we would work with them on a move-out plan if they weren't able to pay their landlord the money that they owed. So we were having those hard conversations that in a very respectful and considerate way, because each case was different. And many of them we worked with the landlord and tenant on a move-out plan or a repayment plan. So that's what took place after that funding ended. Now, after the funding ended, the landlords said, well, we don't need to work with Community Mediation Center anymore. Now it's voluntary. So a lot of them dropped out, which made it harder for us to help landlords and tenants resolve the past due rent issue. Now it's, I think, better known to landlords that it's to their benefit to work with us in helping them resolve that issue, regardless if it's past due rent or maybe another issue with landlord tenants.
So,
It still leaves the question of
yeah,
how could we have a $7+ million gap without having a noticeable severe impact out in the street?
right.
I don't
I think
know.
we know the answer to it, but it'd be nice for it to be not just an inference on no data, but I like to look at things from up high and just see, and this doesn't look good to me.
Well, the part that actually is surprising is that you had a huge government giveaway program that has actually been canceled. And I think you and I can probably agree that that is extremely rare. But while it was going on, it did provide a boost to the economy. And it shouldn't be surprising that we get increasing reports from economists concerned that we're, GDP, the latest report, GDP has not increased in the last quarter at all. And, we shouldn't be surprised that economic stimulus has gone away and it reverts back. So I have no idea how landlords are responding because their cash flow is down. But I haven't heard that rents have gone down, but one would expect that to happen, just as you mentioned, Arn, that we made it easy for landlords not to reduce their rents, but I still haven't heard that part's going on. Certainly the supply has gone up. There've been a lot more multiple family units built in the last year or 2 years.
Yeah, those new buildings are basically the only solution.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I'm expecting to see continue as more of those come online. I don't know what else I can say that hasn't been said.
Can I say something else on that topic about housing? A lot of people would like to see actual more affordable housing available to those very low income population, because what is considered low income housing to many people is still way too high for them. And
Yeah,
it's something that I'm sure it's been talked about, but I'd like to hear more conversation or reports on that.
I don't think that's a valid economic argument. Any housing that's built, if it takes new people, any housing that gets built is new housing available. So if I lived in $150,000 house and I couldn't buy until I got a $500,000 house level, but somebody built a $300,000 house and I could move into that one, and then that leaves my $150,000 house available. It's simply, you can get attracted with arguments like that, but they'll lead you down the wrong path. Just produce more housing. Well, we all know that in the past 50 years or so, there's been booms and busts in housing. The latest one I remember was Las Vegas 20 years ago. You could have bought a condo for half of what the guy had paid for that condo. And now it's turned around. My point is, it's a supply and demand issue, and any finessing of that will always lead you down the wrong path.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with Commissioner Morgan. It's supply and demand. The one thing I will say, and I've said it before and I'll stand by it, we over-regulate things, and the cost, and I provided figures in previous meetings, cost of a new house, 25% of it is identifiable as government regulation. And we just, and we're going to see stuff here, and I think predicted in March, where new building codes are coming out that you're gonna see another rise in the cost to put a house because of some of the nonsensical things they put into place.
Mhm.
So, we need to get sensible regulation and supply and demand.
One
The
more
one
thing,
ver-
and then I'm done. Back to the funding. I think this is a concern of myself and others that when that funding is approved and goes out for a great need, we see that when so much funding goes to a few, and some of them qualify and some of them might not really qualify, that eliminates a great many others who are really in need and could use that money to not benefit from it because it's all used up by the time it's their turn to request it, if that makes any sense. In a year's time, when so much is given out and given in great amounts without that serious vetting process going on, then it could go to those that kind of need it and may very well need it, but it's hard to know because so much of it is going to a few and not spread out as evenly as we'd like it to be.
You identify what is typically called an opportunity cost. And that's why I argue so much on prices. If you spend too much on one, you're not spending enough on another. And so your point is well taken there.
So the chairman talked about the idea that if you build more housing, that will address the need for affordable housing. And the one little variable is we can't control how many people from, say, Clark County find cheaper housing in Calais County and take advantage of it, because it is all relative. It's much more expensive in Clark County. And, there is that transfer. I'm hoping there's enough additional housing that isn't taken up by Clark County residents that there's that transition and leveling of costs actually occurs. But, one of the things we all learn is that there are an awful lot of things we don't have a lot of control over.
Well, yeah, and I don't disagree with that, Dennis. In a perfect world, we'd be building industry and then building houses to house the workers for that and not be a bedroom community in a perfect world.
Now you know how the Mexicans in the border towns feel when Americans go over and buy up the store. The locals cannot compete.
Let's see.
I think we've covered everything I wanted to talk about except for one thing. Gina, I'm wondering if you know percentage wise, the amount of money that we send to the state, what percentage comes back?
I think that was along what Commissioner Mortensen was asking. I don't
Right.
know for sure. I can try to get some more information from that.
Okay.
So the document recording fees, what's the amount in that fund right now? Last year it was 2.7 million. What do you got in it now?
Oh,
Isn't it around? I don't know. Shouldn't.
We sent 2 million of that over to community house.
I think there is around 300,000 uncommitted.
and that's
That's
Pretty
a rough
close.
number.
yeah.
Well, I heard one figure from Commissioner Weber, 2 million to the community house. And that leaves 700,000, 750,000. What you do with that?
I think it's closer to around 300,000 mark that's in there, but
That's the current balance, 300,000.
in that particular doc recording fees, it gets
When-
split different ways.
Yeah, when we factor in some of the allocations that have been approved recently, I think close to about 300,000, I think is what we'll have sort of remaining.
And who pays these document recording fees?
Document
Well-
recording fees are collected when individuals record a document with the auditor's office.
The
You're-
biggest
when you-
portion would probably be real estate sales.
When you say individuals, you're talking about taxpayers, correct?
Yeah.
And you just got done mentioning the problem is government regulation. So with all this new technology crap, we're supposed to be able to not even come here. We can file online, right? And you mentioned the biggest impediment to housing is government regulation. So what's a
One of the
recording
biggest
fee?
costs.
What's a recording fee? Is that government regulation?
I'm not
When you
saying,
have to go file your deed?
I'm not telling you I agree with the fee. I'm just telling you it's there.
Well, you did mention one of the problems of getting affordable housing is government regulation.
Yeah.
So this scale of recording fees, and then you do a curly Joe shuffle with the state, and we're not sure how much went to the state, and 2 million of that went to community house, which I didn't know about. And you still stand on the problem to affordable housing is government regulation.
Yeah, I do.
You still stand on it.
I
Okay.
do. If I could get rid of this document recording fee, I'd do it at a strike of a pen. But that comes, that.
Oh, yeah,
state did that.
let's pass the buck to the state. Yeah, I know about that.
They're the ones that implemented it. I'm not passing anything.
And
It's their deal.
You're right here giving $2 million to this entity, 700,000 to this
Okay,
entity. So
I'm
you're
gonna have to
involved
get you
with it.
back on these.
Oh,
agenda
yeah,
items.
let's change the subject, okay?
No,
So you don't
we're on
have to
the
answer the
subject of
question.
consolidated homeless grant.
You should
program.
take lessons from Commissioner Mortensen. He's a lot
I will.
better at confusing the issue than you are, so.
That's an example of how to insult two people with one sentence.
Yeah.
I've been at it a long time, but watching this body for over 30 years is something else. It really is. You got to carry your own body cam to believe the answers that come out of a body like yours. The only one more sensational. Okay, here we go again. And I'll segue into that right now. I was gonna leave because it got so ridiculous. The same thing happened the last time I was here. You didn't do a goddamn thing. Let me read from your own rules.
Are we? No,
No,
we're on
let's
an
finish
agenda
this
item right
now.
now. You can read
Board
from
of
the
Cowlitz
rules when we
County
get the
Commissioners
public comment.
Rules of Practice.
You can read from your rules under public comment. Right now,
Article
we're trying to
11.
get through agenda
The
items.
chairman shall
Mr.
conduct
Dragic,
meeting
Dragic.
generally followed. Oh, now you're gonna invoke the rules now. When I'm repeating the rules right
You can
here.
speak to the rules when we get to public comment. You can read the whole
Ah.
damn document for all I care.
You couldn't
But right
control the
now,
public comment the
right
last
now-
time I was here.
Right now.
And
we
you
wanna
won't
get through this
acknowledge your
agenda
own
item.
rules right now.
When we get through the agenda item, we'll get to your rules.
Yeah, so much for rules.
Yeah,
The last time I was here, I saw your rules.
yeah. We'll get through the agenda item, then you can read the
Not to
rules.
worry about it. You wouldn't acknowledge your own rules now, so I'm not gonna stick around.
Okay. Any other questions on the agenda items? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
That'll be up to you, Dennis.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the amendment to the agreement on the consolidated homeless grant as proposed by staff.
Item 10.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the amendment on item 10.
Mr. Chairman, I will, as you can imagine, all these make me feel uncomfortable because I think we're either part of the problem or part of the solution. And continuing to approve these, my logic says it puts me in being a part of the problem. However, I also have, one of my other notes is that when you have step functions in human issues, it doesn't work very well. It has lots of unintended consequences. So when we went from essentially $9 million of utilities and other subsidies and dropping it down substantially, I'm like, well, we tricked you. We told you we'd pay your rent then, and you may have made plans for it. And now we're pulling the rug out from under you. So I'm really uncomfortable with these. So I'm going to abstain on both these.
So I appreciate your comment, except I think, Gina, didn't we do these HEN contracts all throughout the pandemic in addition to these other COVID-related programs? I mean, we've been doing HEN contracts for the 7 years that you've been on the commission.
Yeah, and how many
So
times
that
have I?
hasn't that program hasn't changed.
The circumstances have changed, and there's a lot of argument. I don't know what your point is there. So I'll just stop.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, when these first came down, county doesn't have to accept these when this first contract came down, these consolidated contracts come down. What happens if the county doesn't accept them? They just deal direct with the entities and send the money direct. And it doesn't come to us. There's no opportunity for you to come up and discuss it. So we voted to approve these consolidated contracts. In my mind, one of the biggest reasons I did was so public would have an opportunity to sit here and actually discuss them instead of the money just going direct and we never seeing it. So I voted for those contracts when they first came down, and that was one of the big reasons. And this is an amendment, so I'll.
I think also I probably voted for it, but I'm pretty sure I argued against the omnibus bill, which this is. It's consolidated. It's everything, even what you don't like.
Right. Right.
But we do get
we do
get to shoot at it.
I'd rather see better breaking down. I agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if we don't have these, then we don't ever have an opportunity for the public to look at them and see them. And so. Okay, asked enough. We have a motion to approve item 10. Call for a vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Item 11. This is.
Yep. Item 11 is passing the amendment funds down to Lower Columbia Cap again as to the contract that was approved a few months ago. It's a little bit more than the state amendment due to the an addition of admin and operation costs as well. So item number 11 is the amendment with Lower Columbia Cap for the HEN portion.
And if it didn't go to CAP, the county would have to create the office. Right?
And do it ourselves? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I mean, that's, if we didn't want CAP to do it, we'd have to duplicate what they do and come up with the bureaucracy. I'd rather not do that.
Yeah. Comments, questions? Not seeing any. Somebody wants to,
I move we approve the request from staff to transfer the money over to CAP to continue their end program.
okay, we have a motion to approve item 11. Once again, I'm looking for any hands. Seeing none, call for the vote. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
Motion passes. It's the end of motion items today. Before we move into public comment, tomorrow we have at 2:30 Three Rivers wastewater in. I think that'll be interesting. They're embarking on a project that I think is pretty good and may be interested in, at least, I don't know what the weather's gonna do tomorrow. You hear all kinds of things, so but that might be interesting to hear about. And January 20,
It'll be on Zoom.
it'll be on Zoom available. So if, I think that they're on a project that is very interesting, and if you want to know more about it, Zoom in tomorrow at 2:30 and you'll be able to hear about it. With that, we'll open to public comment.
I'd just like to say I appreciate Commissioner Mortensen's position and in his concern about using taxpayer money, other people's money for these purposes. And I agree with Commissioner Mortensen's position. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I have a couple questions for Mr. Weber and Arnie Mortensen. When you take oath as a council member, and if you lied to the constituents of Cowlitz County or be deceptive to the constituents of Cowlitz County in any form, what are your thoughts about that if you're a council member and you do that? Either one of you can respond.
That's a pretty loaded question, and it reminds me of why I try to put stuff on paper and do so with great pains to be unambiguous. Anything can and will be used against you is a classic example of how things can get twisted around. I don't know what your objective is here. There are certainly governance rules that are available that say what is proper behavior, but above and beyond that, there's an ethical consideration, and that for me is always supreme.
So between the truth or the lie, if you lied, Arnie, to the Cowlitz County constituents and were deceptive and found that that was true, what would you do?
If it's hard for me to answer that because I pride myself on saying the truth, as painful as it might be to me on a personal level, or as painful as it might be to you on a personal level. If you caught me lying, I'm not sure I could take a look in the mirror and say, ooh, that's okay, Arn. No, I'd probably head for the hills or something like that. That's just not in my lexicon.
Okay. Well, in regards to Paradise Cove RV Park and the articles that came out in the news and the pictures that were shown and the multiple violations that the fire department said, and Tracy Jackson sitting here at that desk, and stating that there was no violations out there and there was no units close together. They're still there today. I did provide all three of you guys pictures of this. And it turns out now I understand that Rick Dahl is in charge of Tracy Jackson. And either that's the building department. And I think he's also in charge of the administrative department, which Jeremy Austin no longer works at now, the other risk manager. And I find this hard to believe since I've been coming here on May 2nd that we've lost two risk managers. And I'm sure people, I hope people understand who the risk manager is. But I know for certain that the constituents of Cowlitz County were deceived and lied to over this summer in regards to that park. And by one council member that is present here today. I want to know District 2 and District 3, what are they going to stand with that? Or are they going to stand against that when these charges are filed?
I'll go ahead and say that I know Rick Dahl. I've known him for a long time. I've known Tracy Jackson for not quite as long, but a long time. If they told me the sky is green, I'm certain I'm going to go out there and see it's a green sky. So your perception and their perception is not the same. Does that make you a liar or does that make them a liar? And I talked to Tracy, and you and I have talked substantially on that. I don't see a cause for me to be reversing my stance on any of the three of you. I don't think you're a liar. I don't think Rick's a liar, and I don't think Tracy's a liar. I don't know what it is you're trying to do with this, and I'm just trying to be polite and then extend the courtesy of answering your question.
Well, I'm just trying to make sure we're clear on everything. And when you have a director of building and planning, and the complaint is as follows, that the units are too close together. And if you look at the RCWs, that explains the distance between the parties. And they go out there and take pictures of those units, and they don't look at none of the pictures that were provided to the Cowlitz County constituents showed any pictures between the units. And I think we all know this. If you three individuals looked at those pictures that Tracy provided, because I brought that up on that day, that's deceptive. Those pictures are only shot from the profile side, from the start to finish, and not anything about my complaint. Over the weekend, we had power outages in part of that park because of the antiquated system in regards to probably what I talked to you about over the summer. There's too many units in there. They're 50 amp service on 30 amp services. They're too close together, just like I said. I find it odd that the fire marshal would say there's multiple violations, whatever fire guy that commented to the paper. And I also find it odd that Tracy Jackson didn't respond to the paper, and I think neither did Rick Dahl. We had a problem out there. I brought you the truth. I sent you the emails. Tracy Jackson didn't even take a tape measure out to the park to measure. She said she didn't have to. Well, she should have. That's part of her job. I reported everything truthfully. And Mr. Dahl went out there and said he didn't see anything like that. And he said in his own words, and I pretty much could closely quote it, Robert painted a different picture. That's not true. You saw the picture even in the news article. That's what I'm talking about. Everybody we talk in here, you want to hold everybody accountable on the things that you're voting for. But do we hold everybody accountable, or do we hold part of the people accountable? Because what I got out of this is you guys made me out a liar, okay? So let's jump off topic. And I told you individuals about this park and these people. Well, January 5th, and I explained this to you, Arnie, and I explained this to Dennis Weber. I don't know if you guys have spoke with Rick because of your OPM or whatever it is. Well, I won that court case. I was in a 3.5-hour trial that suddenly just came out of the blue because these people were lying. I had to cross-examine 5 witnesses. I was my own attorney. They had their attorney, Craig McCreary of Longview. He sat there and lied for them and manipulated everything. He had 72 pages of garbage that he brought up trying to charge me and say I was an instigator and everything else. Okay. The manager said he was a felon in court. Then I also got information that he was out soliciting a firearm and asking people, which we have the names of those people, and hopefully we get a statement from those folks. The individual that I got the restraining order against, that generally you don't go through a trial to get a restraining order. And it was 3.5 hours long minus a 10-minute break. I got the judge that I thought was probably the most honest person. I don't know why I did, because I asked for a recusal of Blondin, Judge Kevin Blondin, and they denied me. But then I get the judge that comes in and he says, we're having a trial today. It just seems odd due to all these circumstances, what took place there. And then we had an individual, like I said, when we met in the back, that looked to be somebody from the county. I can't be certain, but I've been to the prosecutor's office. I've been to the sheriff's office. I've been to everybody, okay, in regards to the restraining orders to be interpreted. And you sure can't go to the sheriff's department if they're a problem. You can't file a complaint with the sheriff's department if they're part of the problem. I find it odd, again, when me and Joanna Barnhart went to the prosecuting attorney's office twice over the summer trying to get an interpretation of these restraining orders. And they wouldn't even talk to us. But I find it more odd when I went in there and talked to them just this last week and asked if I could, I got to think about this because there's been a lot to deal with over the past year in regards to this. I wanted to talk to the I wanted to find out who was in the courtroom that day on January 5th. And the girl behind the counter, she was a little bit like maybe not wanting to help me. That's what I got from her words, but we'll see, she said. Well, at the end of that, I said, well, I want you to know that I have this recorded because, and she got mad and started saying I was impolite and I should have told her and all this information. I said, well, I'm in a public building. And I said, furthermore, I didn't say this to her, but I'm thinking about this after. I'm doing it for your own protection, because if you go back there and make a statement and you lie, I'm going to have you on recording. And that's, you know what? I wouldn't even be recording anybody until the last 10 months of what I've seen in Cowlitz County, between the law enforcement and between the law enforcement primarily and the county, the building and planning department about these people. When I had Paul French on the stand and Craig McCreary Craig McCreary's main theory here about Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson's an instigator. He did this because of rent increases and everything. And I know I spoke in this meeting. I didn't do it for rent increases at all. I did it because of the people that are there victimizing people. Well, Paul French got on the stand after Craig McCreary said all this and said, Mr. Johnson he said we should have raised the rent a long time ago. So I raised this to Judge Hayes. I go, the attorney's saying this, he's saying that. So my point is, we have to hold everybody accountable, not just Robert Johnson, not just Cap, not everybody should be on the same thing. And I brought to your attention earlier this summer, just because you're a law enforcement individual or a voted sheriff doesn't mean you're not a criminal. Okay, there's plenty of them out there. And so if you look at them to be on a pedestal, realize they are getting paid to do their job. It's not a community service thing. When you have somebody out in the community that does something wonderful, I think it's called altruism. There's the people that are the true heroes. Just because you're a fire official or some other official, you're no better than any other man. So I want to make clear today, if you lie to the constituents of Cowlitz County and you're in the position of a council member, then you need to be held accountable. And that's what we have to do, period. So if Rick Dahl lied to the constituents, provide those documents, provide those pictures that Tracy Jackson provided, bring them next week. Let's all review them. And then I'll bring the pictures I provided to you guys. All you got them in your emails. I asked all three of you in a meeting. And let's get down to brass tacks and be honest with each other. I'm more than willing to be right here. Because I don't know what you folks think of me, but I know one thing. I'm not going away and we're not moving and we shouldn't have to. We're finding out these people are just what I said they were. Okay? He's out shopping for a gun. He's a felon. He told the people he was shopping for a gun that he had cash in the building and he needed a gun. Okay? Brad Thurman don't know this because Brad Thurman didn't know anything. When we went on November 14th, me and Joanna, he knew nothing of what was happening on at that park, but he has full confidence in his officers. I find this just appalling. And then if Rick Dahl has full confidence in the fire official that says he has multiple violations out at the park, and then our building and planning director says there's no problem and we didn't find anything that we should, I mean, but yet then in another action, she says, well, they told us to talk to their attorney and they weren't cooperative. What the hell's going on here? You talk about to these other people to get your data, get your information so they can substantiate their monies to bring forth and vote for. But we have it right here, right underneath your nose. The county did not do their job. And when Tracy Jackson said she looked back in her 3 years of environmental service statements or whatever it was, I've lived there 10 years. Nobody's done anything out there. And the 10 years prior to I lived there, there was no fire extinguishers. The reason why we've had the things done at Paradise Cove RV Park is because Robert Johnson, Joanna Barnhart, Barb Reeves, Keita Beagle, and one other party, Mindy, I don't know her last name, have filed complaints. And if we wouldn't have done that, it would have been in the same status. Okay? I don't understand why you guys are trying to cover this up, or some of you. Some of you don't want to speak because you're afraid to incriminate yourself, which I do understand. But you don't support individuals that lie. Bottom line, Judge Hayes didn't in the courtroom on January 5th. And I didn't even have to supply my video evidence and my audio evidence. We have the same problem in the sheriff's department that you guys say you're not responsible for, but we pay them. We have officers that have totally lied, fabricated, and omitted in statements. I just got all these from your new communication center. If you read them, you'll fall over dead. And it goes back to what I said in May or June about report writing. One of the things I'll make 2 points. The statements that they made against me because I confronted their officers about lying and not corroborating evidence and looking into things to get the truth, because I wouldn't be here if they did that. Matter of fact, it would already be solved. I would have got the restraining order in March of last year instead of January 5th, the permanent order. You got to, we have to hold these people accountable. Brad Thurman, if he didn't know squat, and then he asked you, Officer Hanby is undersheriff. Now, these guys are supposed to be, they're the hierarchy of Cowlitz County Sheriff's Department. And he asked Joanna, I'll say again, and the reason why he asked Joanna is he didn't want to really look at me because they're pissed at me because I confronted their behaviors and misconduct, as you know, in this meeting. Joanna, can we look those people up on Google? Now that's a higher authority of a sheriff setting or under the sheriff. And he's asking Joanna, a 73-year-old woman, if they can find out about those individuals on Google. I remember when I first came here last summer, there were people in the audience that already had it on their phone and they go, oh, they're bad people. Right here. But we have the people that are supposed to protect and serve the community, and they didn't. They failed, and we had to suffer because of that. Me and Joanna, we had to stay in our homes. We had to hide because we were afraid to get more accosted and victimized. You don't think I cried during times over this last summer? You don't think Joanna did? Well, we did, because we weren't getting represented properly. I had one officer tell me, if they assault you, we'll come out and do something about it. I have him on recording. These guys don't get it. And like I said before, Barb Reeves ran into an officer that resigned. He said they're all corrupt, except for one. And I won't mention that name at this point in time, but I want accountability with Rick Dahl. And if I have to file that, I don't know. We're going to need two parties, two of the quorum, to solve the problem. He lied, and he lied about me. I haven't lied. That's why January 5th I won again. Okay. So you guys need to really think about this. And like I told you, Arnie, I think it was, they owe us a major apology for what's gone on here. And he said I was out on a vendetta. No, I wasn't. This is what's been going on. Okay. And back to the power outage this weekend, 14, 15 degrees, 70-year-olds, 75-year-olds having to call the managers, hey, our power's not working. Hey, our power's not working. And then, and one individual came to me and said that he got treated like dirt. Okay. I won't mention any names, but if I have to, I will. Just like I told you folks, that park was not engineered for what's going on there. But Tracy Jackson don't take a tape measure to measure between the units and doesn't take any pictures whatsoever. You guys worked against me directly because you wanted to. It isn't about displacement. You lied before the talk about displacement. I talked to the state's attorney about displacement. I recommended something about how to fix the problem. He asked me, Sebastian Miller. Okay? No, I'm not going to let this go either. Rick Dahl did wrong. Rick Dahl lied to his community and all people. And so did Tracy Jackson. You guys might, well, I don't know if you could talk to him, but that's what I have. And I got in these communication, this is in regards to the sheriffs, the same problem. And the report writing, this will be it for me today. But I want to make clear, there has been a wrong here. And so have the people in Paradise Cove that filed complaints and exercise their rights have been victimized by the county and the owners of the park and those managers. And it's all going to come out in the wash. And I find it appalling that we don't look out for people. And the officers didn't do their statements. Just like I said over the summer, I brought up to the Victoria Blasel that's no longer here. I said, and I even brought it up to Jeremy Austin, that's no longer here, that was under, I think, Rick Dahl's authority. I said, the biggest failure in this country is report writing by the officers. Now, in my behalf, it was intentional. But if you look at their prior report writings, and we had over 200 calls in 14 or 15 months, according to Julie Harris, at that park. If you look at those reports, now I know why over the weekend when Nikki Haley said, our eighth graders have a third grade comprehension level and a fifth grade comprehension level. This is the same problem in the sheriff's department, because if you look at the writings, you couldn't vindicate. Well, matter of fact, everybody's vindicated because the statements are poor, very poor. And I can't say they're all intentional, but I'll state the one on 10/26 of this last year, when Officer Blanton, Officer Ward, and I think it was Officer White, when the manager's brother-in-law decided to call me a fucking faggot and say he was going to kick my ass and tell me to come out in the middle of the street. Officer Blanton wrote stuff in there that's an absolute lie. Now, I asked for the body cam footage, and I'll be leaving here today to make sure I get that, because I already requested it. And what I've also found, our statements that we've wrote over the last 10 months aren't in these documents, and I'm going to ask Julie Harris in regards to that. We do have copies of our own statements, but where are they and why aren't they coming when I order these reports? And we'll probably get to the bottom of that. But what I found also reading these guys are all writing supplements after the fact now, because I brought it to the table, and they're targeting me. Well, when you got witnesses and you got video and they're lying, it's probably not wise to lie. And I'll never forget Officer Hanby on November 14th, between the hours of, I think it was 1 and 2:20, when he smiled and he looked at me and he said, "Have you read this report?" And they had a supplement on there, which is all lies. We have a problem, guys. We all know we have a problem all the way across the country. But if you think your sheriff's department is exempt, you're dreaming. If you think there's other problems, we also, Arnie, in your own words, you told me the other day that this country's lost. It is. It absolutely is. But do we start to fix it? Do we hold people accountable? You know, I mean, Officer Lorenzo, I read his statement I got, and it was kind of surprising. And that was back in 2022 or 2020, somewhere back there, where this Kathleen Smith said I did drugs and did all this stuff. And this was in court. That was their witnesses they had in court on January 5th, statements and stuff like that. It's just appalling. So do we cut the snake's head off, or do we allow it to keep happening? It's with everything. I totally understand what we've talked about this.
I think you've gone plenty on that. I'll go into a very, very quick anecdote, and then I'll address just a couple of things. Many years ago, when my two older kids were of college age, I got my older daughter, an internship at Qualcomm, where I was a VP at the time. And I asked my older boy if he wanted a job in the IT department there, just, doing the menial stuff. He said no, and I was, why? He said, because you would fire me. The point I want to make is I'm an interloper in this county, in the sense that I didn't grow up here. I didn't go to Kelso or anything like that. So I know that I've already got a couple of strikes against me whenever I pursue anything. So I don't do anything. I've never done anything because you're my friend. I'm not going to carry your obligations. I'm not going to do anything like that. I'm not going to sacrifice principles for friendship.
Right.
And in that vein, I want you to hear this very clearly. I trust Tracy. I trust Rick Dahl explicitly.
Mhm.
I don't need to go ahead and do anything else. I'm not going to pursue anything on their part, or I should say on your part against them, because there's nothing there. I just don't see any reason for you to be pursuing that. Now, As to the other stuff, I don't know what happened in the courts. I know good people get terribly afield of things when they see it as the big picture, and the big picture is an important thing. You called me on saying, I think we're lost in this country, and I think we are. We backslid so much, I don't recognize this country. And that makes me very, very sad and pretty emotional too, because there's no place else to go. So what happens with the sheriff, as we've explained to you any number of times, and any of those people, we have no control over it at all, not one iota. And so mentioned earlier today, I'm a practical individual. I'm going to fight the fights that I think I can prevail on and make headway. I'm not going to keep quiet, but I'm not going to put my head in a noose when it doesn't make any sense, because nothing is to be gained. That's a position I see here. I would recommend that you concentrate on things that are outside of the purview of the board now, because I don't see anything that we can do to help you.
Well, I agree with you to some extent, Arnie, but I know you probably can't do anything about this, but I can seek the charges filed, and then you guys will just have to do testimony or whatever, and it's
Right.
pretty much all here. I don't know total procedures, but I will get to that. And my question is do you believe scandal should go on in the council board members or lies? That's my point. That's why I'm here asking these questions to you and Dennis. If somebody lied as a council member, I don't think, my opinion, they should be on the council member board any further. And it's pretty much said, and because I certainly know I didn't lie. It's not about perception. It's about truth when it comes to that. Perception, I mean, everybody can say that to defer or deter that, but that isn't what we have here. And these county officials are paid to do a job. And when you go out to a job and you take pictures and you don't even, you saw the pictures I sent you. What they provided were total deception, and that was intentional. And then Rick saying he went out there and said he didn't see any of this. And I sent you several pictures. And then the fire marshal stating that Rick has full confidence in.
Yeah, you've said this before any number of times, so I would leave it at that. We just, yeah.
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear, because thank you. I appreciate it.
One clarification I would make is no single commissioner has authority over any department. We have authority as a group. We divide up, we act as liaisons to different departments. We make that determination. Well, we just did it in January. Like I sit on 911, you sit on the senior place, Dennis sits on law and justice. We divide those things up. So just to make that clarification, we don't have singular authority over the department. Commissioners have authority as a group, and anything that happens in the department comes with a vote of the commissioners.
In fact, it was the chairman, the current chairman, who reaffirmed that he would require the knowledge of the other two commissioners before he would sign anything, because there are things that people will slip under the chairman's nose there and say, just sign here. And he won't do that if it's not known to the other two commissioners.
Well, I understand that. And I spoke with Dennis Weber in regards to that, but he said you made divisions, and Rick Dahl was in charge of the building and planning department. I also I came into the building and planning department and asked the question. Tracy Jackson came out there immediately and said, Rick Dahl is my supervisor and he's my boss. So I don't, and granted, you already said what you said, but also I spoke with Dennis Weber. You guys divided yourselves amongst parties, and Dennis is in charge of the museum or whatever. I mean, I find it odd that Tracy Jackson would come out behind the counter and say, Rick Dahl. She didn't say Rick Dahl, Dennis Weber, and Arnie Mortensen. She said Rick Dahl. That's enough for today. Thank you and have a good day.
Well, once again, we act as liaisons to different departments, but we don't make individual decisions on any department. The way it's been for a long time. Anything else? I got a note here was passed to me. Due to weather and limited staff, the assessor's office and auditor's office will be closing early. Assessor's office is gonna shut down at 3. Auditor's office is yet to be determined. And it looks like HHS will be closing at 2 today.
Yeah, this actually is a good example of, with respect to the auditor, we can't go to her and say, you will stay open.
No, that's her call.
That's her call. Same thing with the assessor. HHS is a different story, but we're not going to come down with a hammer on something. Apparently there was a common sense call made. And there's no reason for me to go down and check and make sure, well, let's see, there's only a 1/4 of an inch of ice here, not 3/8 that you said was there. That kind of thing.
Yeah. Anything else?
Thank you for the entertainment.
You're paying
welcome.
for it.
Every Tuesday, 9 o'clock. We're here for your entertainment. Okay, without that, I appreciate everybody's participation today, and we will adjourn. Thank you.